How much money do you need to feel like you have enough, to feel like you are financially free? I want to chat today about what that number looks like for you and why the feeling of freedom or the feeling of having enough is not just always based on money in the bank. This is the Profit and Prosper podcast, the podcast that empowers female entrepreneurs to make more money, become financially independent, and live prosperously. I'm your host, Sarah Young, a seven-figure agency owner and business and wealth coach who has worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs to create more profitable, sustainable businesses. So I want to tell you a story about just enough, having just enough. So this was a few weeks ago. I was working with a client who was working through changing around her business strategy and trying to fix some issues that she just kept running into around, sustainable growth and being able to manage the team and feeling stressed out in the day-to-day. And one of the things that she said when we were mapping out her plan, specifically around numbers, because you know that I love to bring in numbers and set money goals and financial targets for everything that we do. One of the things that she said to me as we were working through the plan was, I really just want to know, how much do I need to just get by? How much do I need to just be able to pay the bills? Because I think she was feeling a little bit maybe just burned out or overwhelmed at the idea of shooting for more, right? Of aiming high and getting burned and just feeling frustrated. And so she was like, how much do I need to just have enough? And what I said, and this is what I always tell people who want to just plan around the bare minimum, is this is not how we plan, okay? So when we create financial plans, I do want to know what is the minimum revenue that you need, but I also want to know how much revenue do you need to have coming in to hit all of your big goals that you have. And there's a difference, right? If we just plan on hitting the bare minimum revenue of this is how much I need to have coming in to pay my bills, to cover my team and all of my software and office costs and so on and so forth, and then to be able to pay myself personally enough to cover taxes and then, of course, pay my personal bills. If you don't have any extra, then you're never going to get ahead. So we've been talking about wealth creation. I've been talking about wealth creation more lately. And when we think about structuring the cash flow from our businesses, we have to understand that there's a difference in just barely squeaking by and in truly feeling like you do have enough. And then when we create our plans, we want to make sure that we're not just planning for the bare minimum, because if all that you plan for is to just have enough to pay the bills, then of course, that's all you're ever going to have. You will never feel abundant. So keep listening to this episode. We're going to talk about the ways that I see people approaching this question of enoughness. We'll talk about the skills that you need to feel financially free and the tactical piece of how to figure out the answer to this question for yourself of how much do I need to feel financially free? So when it comes to the way that most people answer this question of how much money do you need to feel like you have enough, I find that they tend to fall into one of two camps. And it tends to correspond to the way that you default to handling money on a day-to-day basis. So I find that most people tend to default to handling their money in one of two ways. Either you tend to spend the money that you have as quickly as it comes in, and you don't ever seem to have a lot extra left over at the end of the month. That's one camp. The other camp that people fall into is hoarding every dollar that they get, not wanting to spend, trying to be very frugal, and feeling secure, really never feeling secure with money in the bank because they just want more and more and more and more. Okay. And so, of course, we fall into the spectrum of either defaulting to being a spender or defaulting to being I'll say saver, but not necessarily even saving. Like people who tend to pile up cash in their account, it's not that they're even saving it. They just feel paralyzed at the thought of taking that money out of their bank account. And so these camps, these two different ways that people approach their money, oftentimes influence the answer to this question of how much is enough. So the people who tend to default into spending a lot of money, which for full disclosure, I fall into that camp. I definitely default to spending money a lot faster than I save it. And I'm aware of that. And so I have to put things in place to overcome that because obviously I want to save money. So if we fall into the side of tending to spend very quickly all of our money, then when we think about how much is just enough, your answer is probably going to be, I just want enough to get by. I just want to know, like, how much do I need to pay the bills, right? You tend to underestimate the amount that you need. I honestly think that this mentality comes from your money mindset, and just the way that you handle money is the identity of, or the thought of, I only have enough to get by, right? And so if we think to ourselves, I only have enough to get by, or I'm just able to pay the bills, then we don't ever have that abundance of having more than enough to get by, right? Now, on the other hand, the people who tend to not want to spend money, who tend to want to be frugal, who overanalyze all their spending decisions and pile up cash in their bank account, their answer to the question of how much is enough is usually, I'll never have enough. I could never have enough cash in the bank. Or the answer is a really high number because they feel security in having that cash sitting there. And I truly think this comes from a scarcity mindset of, if I don't have this cash, my business might fail and then I'm never going to have enough money. And so I need this almost like a security blanket. The cash in your account is a security blanket. So I think it's just important to recognize the way that you default. And I'm not saying these are right or wrong, good or bad, just understanding that these default mindsets that you have and the way that you manage your money may or may not be serving you when it comes to thinking about how do you have enough. So I think the ones who tend to be, have a cash stockpile, I would guess, and this is a generalization, of course, everybody's unique, but I would guess that a lot of those clients that I've seen do have a lot of anxiety around their businesses not being sustainable, not having the confidence that they're able to sustain the income that they've made. And so they feel like they have to keep it there in case it all burns to the ground, right? On the other hand, I think that the people who tend to spend things as quickly as they come in also have this feeling of, this next thing that I buy is going to be the thing that finally blows everything up. You're sort of outsourcing your own power and like confidence in yourself to make things work out into all of these other things. The idea of having an abundance of cash, you may logically know that you want to have more money in the bank, but when it comes to actually envisioning yourself with a big pile of cash in your bank account, you have a block there too, right? You may have some sort of internal tightening of thinking about like, ooh, I don't feel safe to have this much money, okay? So we have to recognize the way that you default to handling your money in order to help us answer the question of how much is enough. And so I honestly think as a business owner, freedom and enoughness does absolutely come from the tactical piece of having money targets, understanding like how your financials are flowing through and making sure that you have enough money, and understanding like how much do I need to be investing and putting into retirement accounts or brokerage accounts, real estate, whatever it is, to build wealth. There's definitely that tactical piece, but what I think is more important is the skills. Building your skills as an entrepreneur. So if you do have bad months, if something happens to cause your business to slow down overall, that you can recognize that and be able to turn it around quickly, right? So on the one hand, to be able to do that, yes, have money in the bank because that will give you the runway to be able to turn it around, but it's also about the skills. So would you feel differently if you were confident in your skills as a business owner to bring in leads, to convert them into paying clients, and to deliver a great product or a great offer to them? Would you feel more confident in your business overall? And would the answer to how much is enough change if you knew you could do that? My guess is yes, that answer would change. Okay. So I think the skills that we need to feel financially free have to do with creating offers that people are willing to pay good money for, to be able to generate leads and then convert them into paying customers. And then, of course, delivering what you say you're going to deliver so that you have happy clients and they come back for more and they refer more people to you. So I think no matter which of the two camps that you tend to default to, these skills are beneficial for you to have, right? So if you're the type who spends money as fast as it comes in, if you were confident in your own skill set, would you be able to stop buying, all of these different softwares and programs and the next thing that you might need in your business? Would you feel more confident to be able to rely on the things that you already have at your disposal? And on the flip side, if you're the type who wants to hoard as much cash as you can in your account because it makes you feel secure, if you had those skills also, you would be more comfortable with releasing some of that money and putting it to use in other ways because you're always going to know that you can generate more whenever you need it. Okay. So having enough is not always just based on the money that you have in the bank. It is absolutely your skill set and your confidence in that skill set. But of course, I do want to address the tactical side of things because I recognize that not everybody is comfortable with calculating the numbers that they need to answer the question of how much money is enough, right? Because there's absolutely the energetic and skill set side that has nothing to do with numbers. But then also there is the tactical side of we need to know the data, right? Like you can't just delude yourself into saying like, oh, it's okay. I'm going to bring in what I bring in and I'm going to figure it out. I mean, you could, right? There's certainly people who do that. But in terms of long-term being able to save and invest money and generating more than enough, having abundance, we need to know some numbers. So the numbers that you would need to answer how much money is actually enough. It's like what I said in the story at the beginning about the client, right? We do not just plan to get by on just your living expenses. However, we do need to know what your living expenses are. So we need to understand on a monthly basis, how much money do you actually need to live in your personal life? If you are married or if you have a partner that you split the bills with, you need to understand, like, you need to be on the same page with them about how much money your household needs. How much are you expected to contribute? My husband and I have this conversation, and my take has always been, I'm going to contribute what I'm expected to contribute, what we agree on collectively to pay the bills. And then if I generate money above and beyond that, it's really up to me to decide what to do with it because I made it, right? From my own business, all from my head. So I get to decide what to do with it. But you need to have that conversation about what are your living expenses and how much are you expected to contribute? And if the answer is you're not expected to contribute anything, this is a side note for those of you who have partners or spouses who have high-paying W-2 jobs, we still need to have goals, right? Like we can't just default to, well, I don't need any money, so therefore I don't have to make any money. Like, no, we need to have goals. And so your goals can come from the next piece, which is how much do we need to be saving and investing? So, I talk about having money in the bank, having savings, having your cash cushions. And so if you don't have those, we have to set savings goals of how quickly could we get, at least 2 months, 1 to 2 months of expenses covered in your business checking account or savings account. And then on the personal side, your own emergency fund, again, should be at least 2 to 3 months, if not 6 months or more. Okay. And so if you don't have those built up, which in my experience, most people don't, we need to set savings goals, and that money can come from your business. So when we think about the tactical side of how much money does our business need to generate, it's not just living expenses. Like we're not going to plan and set goals and go hard after just barely scraping by. We want to have extra. And the extra is what goes to savings. And then the next piece beyond that is investing. And so that I think everybody should have at least a minimum amount going into retirement. I have a lot of clients who are into other types of investments outside of retirement. And so that is also fine. But ultimately, the goal is we want to be investing to build our overall net worth. Okay. And just barely having enough or having a ton of cash in your business checking account is not doing anything for you to build those investments. Okay, so when we think about the tactical piece, we've got to figure out, okay, how much do I need to live? How much do I want to be setting aside into savings on a monthly basis? And then how much do I need to be investing? So to answer the investment piece, I'll do this very quickly. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this in other podcast episodes, but the way that we calculate your investment goal is we, one, have to figure out how much money would you need to have saved up or invested by the time you get to retirement. There's tons of calculators online that you can use to calculate your ultimate retirement goal. So how much do you need to have invested to be able to live off of your investments and not have to generate cash flow anymore? So I won't go into that. There's tons of calculators online. You can also look up something called the 4% rule, which is a rule that if you go into the FIRE community, Financial Independence Retire Early, this is a rule that a lot of people use. So go and check those out. And I just checked back at my whole podcast catalog. And if you go all the way back to episode 23, I also talked about those key retirement planning questions about retirement age and how much you need and all that stuff. So go check out that episode to, get some help around calculating your target retirement number. Even if you don't want to retire, you can replace that with being a work optional or financial freedom number. It would be the same thing. Okay. But ultimately, we have to figure out how much you need. And then there are also calculators online that would tell you how much you need to be contributing into investments every year in order to hit your goal by your target retirement age. And so we want to do the math around that. It's usually, spoiler alert, it's usually a little bit higher than a lot of people realize it is. And I don't say that to be scary. It's just sort of a reality check of we need to be addressing our investments, right? This is why we cannot just plan around barely scraping by. And so you can go and figure out how much you need to contribute. And then that becomes a profit goal in your business. So those numbers combined, plus any other business investments you want to make, plus, of course, business savings goals, you've got to cover taxes, but all of those numbers inform the way that you structure your business. And so we need to understand, okay, if my goal is to contribute $20,000 a year into my investment accounts, plus I need $10,000 a month to live. And I also want to be adding, a couple, maybe like another 10, 20,000 to my savings. Then all of that combined is what you want to be generating in terms of profits from your business. So then let's say all of that combined is $150,000, right? Then you're going to know, okay, in order to hit that goal, I'm going to need to generate at least double that in terms of revenue, if not a little bit more. So typically I like for that take home number to be 30 to 50% of sales. And so if you want to take home 150K, that would be what? 300K to, I'm going to pull up my calculator and figure out what is the high end, 500. So you would want to generate $300,000 to $500,000 in revenue in order to be able to take home $150,000 as 30 to 50% of sales. Now, I know that's a big range, and understanding where you fit in that range, I actually talked about that in episode 95. I walked through 3 different business models, and that example was how to pay yourself $100K, but you can kind of use the same methodology to calculate whatever your numbers need to be. So in that episode, I went through different business models from very high ticket B2B to a not quite as high ticket B2C type of business model, what we typically see in terms of revenue, expenses, margins, all that stuff. Okay. So lots of resources I already have for you to go check out. So to wrap it up, let's all answer the question of how much do we need to feel like we have enough? How much money do we need to earn in order to feel like we are financially free? And use the tactical tips. Go check out the other resources I have to help you understand from a number standpoint, how much money does that actually look like? But then also understand that you can have all of the money that you want in the bank and still not feel free, because if you don't have the confidence in your plan, if you don't have the confidence in your skills, you will never feel free. So to that end, I have been working on something behind the scenes, actually 2 things that I am really, really pumped about that will directly help you with that confidence. The confidence in having a plan, the confidence in your skill set, and of course, the tactical side, as always, with getting real about money and numbers that we need in order to hit our financial goals. So what I'm creating, I'm not going to share the details of this week. It'll be coming soon, but this is going to be for you. If you are a business owner who wants more profits and more pay from your business, if you want clarity in your financial freedom plan and feel confident about your ability to execute on that plan. Whether you are new to business or already making six figures, this is for you. So if you are on my email list, you will be the first to know about all of the fun stuff that I have got up my sleeve. So definitely we'll put the link in the show notes to get on my email list. You can also get my free Wealthy CEO guide that will also get you on my email list. And you will be the first to know when I share the details of what I have been working on. And you will also get first dibs on all of the waitlist bonuses that I have. So that's all I've got for y'all this week. I hope that it got your wheels turning, and I'll see you back here for the next episode. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Listening and learning is great, but implementing what you learned is even better. So what's one thing you can do this week to make more money in your business, save for your financial future, and start living your most prosperous life? If you found this episode helpful, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and share with a friend, because it helps me reach more amazing female entrepreneurs like yourself. See you in next week's episode.